it's clearly, a message game. And the question is whether, now this is a very severe question that I have for any such game. To what extent is the discourse of the game confined to, oh, the poor peoples, oh, the poor, oh, the poor people. We should do something for them. We should make sure that they're Christians, and we should make sure and sew them pants, or something like that. Or to take it one step further, your rebellious youth may idealize those folks and start adopting their headdresses and their dwelling structures as symbols. And these are, if you will, still very much not quite in the headspace, or in the empathic space, I should say, of playing those who are in fact impacted. And so I don't know. I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, many movies, many books, many pieces of work have failed at this task, in my opinion. I mean, I imagine all of us have grappled with that, either as students, as creators, as readers, viewers. And the debate goes on. Just to pick Dances with Wolves, which is the first thing that comes to mind for our traitor human character, if that's what we're going to call him. The debate will go on about whether the movie is stealth racist, right? Even in its the noble savage does not really serve the purpose of awareness, I think. But it's putting a lot of weight on one poor little role-playing game to solve that problem for all of us, though, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, one of the things I've played Demi-Humans a few times, and one of the things that it is, one of the many aspects that I find fascinating about the game is that the characters, since they are from these different demi-human character groups, they are not automatically in solidarity with each.
let's see how you go. You were just saying that they were not automatically in solidarity with each other. That's the last thing I heard.
Yeah, and so when I've played the game, there has been a lot of conflict and tension between the characters, and some of them are kind of thinking also about, oh, I'm playing a gnome and I don't like the orc, and can I, to what extent might I leverage the humans kind of bearing down on us to kind of mess with the orc character. So I mean, you have, that there is a motivation, you would think, for the demi-humans in the game to unify and kind of put up some solid front. But the way the game is kind of set up, as well as the way I've seen it played out, is there's also this kind of interesting kind of conflict that's kind of going on between the characters as well.
So the other question I have now, considering that we're talking about Powered by the Apocalypse playbooks, I assume that ultimately they're different in like little dribs and drabs, right? I mean, they all have the same number of special moves. They all have a plus here and a minus there. They're all kind of little tweaks on the defaults, without like one. There's not like a really powerful one and a really weak one, for example. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, I think that, I mean, now the special moves, like the gnome's special moves, are fully distinctive, right, for the gnome. But yeah, every character group has its own kind of playbook with its own specific special moves in addition to the moves that all the characters have access to.
Right. So in other words, the interesting, okay, let me back up. When people talk about this game, I always find myself forced to dial back a bit to, first of all, John Wick's Orc World from 2000, which is kind of like Demi-Humans, except that there's just orcs. And there's no playing any humans or anything else. You're playing one of the orc tribe. And the humans are it's the Empire of the Sun. They look like Romans, and they're basically screwing them all over. There are elves. There are horrific monsters. I mean, horrific monsters from the orc point of view, and probably objectively too. And basically, the orcs are underpowered compared to all the others. But by all the others, there aren't any character options for players. So I shouldn't say others. I should just say to all the adversity that they may face. They're all adverse, and you're screwed. I mean, so it's not the kind of game that we're talking about where you have all these different player character options. But I always bring it up when Demi-Humans is raised, because from everything I hear, I'm not saying anything bad. I mean, games can be about whatever they want, but there is a fairly well developed game that really drove into this to a very grim degree, actually. And then I guess we could even go further back. I think we talked about this before when we did the other lab. We talked about Dark Folk, the unfortunately named supplement that I think maybe I'll have to double check, but it may have been from Mayfair Games or one of those others kind of, compatible with Dungeons and Dragons publications. But it basically presented all of the monster races of D&D as viable low-tech societies with cultures of their own and with viewpoints and stuff like that. So it was, and that was way back in the 80s. I mean, that was a long time ago. So I guess what I'm interested in is when we look at that game or games like it, to what extent are we objectifying? Maybe we're being very positive or on their side, I guess you could say. But to what extent are we objectifying and performing that very distressing act, which is to say, oh, it's so terrible that all these people were massacred. Oh, I feel so bad about it now. Right? That's a very tempting and deadly point of view. So on the other hand, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Ignore it, not play it, right? So, I mean, I just think Demi-Humans kind of sits right there in that question. And but that's what the diversity of, different character races raises, at least for that one. Rod, did you come up with something while you were thinking about this?
Yeah, well, when you were having the science fiction discussion, I pulled up a PDF copy of Star Frontiers, and
Wow.
To your point, it's actually an interesting document. To your point, I immediately found the language and the description of human. To members of the other races, and races is a weird word to use. All right, for humans and then insect people, right, are different races. Okay, sure. Yeah. But to members of the other races, the most puzzling aspect of human behavior is their curiosity and love of adventure.
There you go. Right. Everybody else is content in their ways. Everybody else has their way. And, then these obstreperous humans are wandering about being themselves, and poking into things. Which basically we just groan, clutch our temples and say, role-playing doesn't use it right, and science fiction from which it derives it doesn't use it right, and fantasy. Right. So, and then right isn't right either. So we're way down the road. I mean, we are way, way, way down the road of crazy when it comes to that term. So we just
Yeah.
wince and say, all right, we're talking about science fiction and fantasy. They're doing this for something that isn't representational of reality. They're doing it for something, and it's a terrible word to use for it. But the something that they're doing it for is kind of interesting. So,
Right.
we all accept it. Go ahead, Herman. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm also guessing that Star Frontiers, being from TSR and from the same period as the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, will have used some of the terms used for their fantasy game lines as well.
Yeah, probably.
So when you look at these guys, we see the humans. Now, is this the case where humans are the all-round adaptable? Because that's what you find sometimes, not all the time, but you find it sometimes in the design of these games where you have a whole ton of these character options, and humans are one of them. In whatever version of Dungeons and Dragons, humans don't get some great big specific benefit. Seeing in the dark comes to mind as sort of the one thing humans can never do.
Boy, that isn't
right. But also, more importantly, they also are the only ones who don't have some other built-in limitation. In the early D&D, it was caps, a capacity for how many levels you could have in any class.
Right.
But humans don't have that. And then there are others as well. There are other things you can find. In 4th edition, humans don't get as many pluses to distribute across their characteristics, but they get an extra feat to start. The idea being that humans have sort of this weird kind of diverse difference from all the others that usually denotes some kind of flexibility or some kind of breadth to humans that the others don't have.
Yeah, and they don't get a fixed bonus usually to a specific stat, but they can choose wherever they put the bonus or don't get a bonus or a penalty.
Right. So in this case, does that, I assume, I'm trying to remember, is it basically that humans are unmodified and then the others basically are spins on the human template for character creation?
Well, I'll read more from the human description. Humans are not especially strong or quick and are no smarter than the other races. However, humans are very inventive and adaptable.
So they're not smarter, but they are inventive and adaptable.
Yeah, exactly.
But go on. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In terms of, I'm not in the section that has statistics. And I can't scroll and talk.
That's fine. I was going to ask something about Traveler, to move back to Traveler. In the case, sorry, go ahead.
Oh wait, I see. Yeah, no, here it is. No, you're exactly right. Humans are 0 across the board for ability modifiers, and the other races have little +5s and -5s here and there.
Now, I don't consider that in and of itself dreadful as a concept, but I will point out there are few games I can think of in which humans have a modification that's equivalent to any others. It just has its own spin. Apocrypha, the one that I talked about in the video, is like this, where there are a variety of different character options, and the human-like one is one of them. And it has its own little modifications to the baseline character creation, just like any of the others has. So they're not used as a default. The same goes for an incredibly obscure game called Hidden Legacy, which I always liked because its bug species and are really, really different. I mean, it's a kind of a nice little focused science fiction adventure game that features no terrestrial humans. There are human-like creatures who are native to this same planet. And they have like dark gray skin and live pretty much like historical tribal humans have lived. And the authors go ahead and say, yeah, they are pretty much stand-ins for a player who just can't hack playing a bug or a lizard or something. But on the other hand, they are not treated, again, they're not treated as the default character build. And then everybody else has a spin on that. They have their own particular profile of build that makes them one among many. So that's kind of an important point. Do we have a situation where humans are one among many, or do we have something where the humans are, kind of notable, kind of got a insetting edge to them, that matters.